day that I wake up in a nightmare. Every day that I wake up.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel, Kathy Channel. Bienvenido a mi canal de Kathy. Hoy yo no voy a hablar en español, todo va a ser en inglés. So, si usted se suscribió para mí porque yo hablo español y he hecho algunos videos en castellano, se lo agradezco. Pondré los subtítulos a ver si le salen, pero lo siento, lamentablemente voy a hablar en inglés. So I want to talk about a subject that interests me. Like I said, in this channel, we're going to talk about things that I like, that I enjoy. I got my other channel for reaction, and this one is to talk about the topics that are part of my life. And one of the things that are very interesting to me that I put most interest is mental health. That's a topic that to me catches my attention and has kept my attention since I guess I would say 5, 6 years old. I didn't read my first book until my first mental health book, or not actually mental health, but self-help book. My self-help book, because I at that time I couldn't call it depression, and it's because I didn't know. I was a kid, but I knew that there was something that I needed to deal with. I knew that my background was not normal. You see, I there was a moment in my life when I thought that I was depressed genetically speaking, like it was in my genes because my mom was depressed too. But my mom, now that I look back at it, she had a very tough life and she didn't have the resources that I grew up with. So she wasn't able to deal with her depression, even though she did get to go and see a psychiatrist one time or psychologist. And she told me that they told her to go out and walk around every time she felt down, every time she felt depressed. So, but that was very late in her life. I was already an adult. I was already a grown woman when she told me that, when she was doing that. She wasn't handling when she was raising me, put it that way. And when you come from a background like mine, where there is domestic violence, there is child abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, you grow up like a warrior. You're constantly in a state of alert, you know, looking at everything around you, trying to read signs when the chaos is going to come. You're never ever settled. You're never at peace because you learn. Like, I'm talking about people that were born and raised like I was, who were born into chaos. It's very different. I know that a lot of people go through abuses and psychological traumas, they happen later in their life. I'm talking about when these psychological traumas and these abuses start from the moment that you're born, and even before that, because my dad was already beating my mom when I was inside of her, before she had me. So at a young age, I was always looking for that cure because I knew that my family was not normal. The good thing about my family is not that they are like other abusers. They didn't lock themselves down. Like they were sociable. They had friends. They had people coming over until they stopped coming because the abuse was getting too much. My father was getting drunk and causing chaos. So, people started, getting away from him, from the family. But growing up, I got to see that. And my mom always went out to friends. So through her friends' kids and through her friends and through my classmates, I realized when I was like in kindergarten, first grade, that not everybody dealt with the same situation that I was dealing with, that not everybody was being beaten every day because, the parents suspected that, they were touching themselves or because the parent wanted them to learn the timetables and they were only 6 or 7 years old, too young to be able to grasp the concept of multiplication. These cases happen to me in particular, and that's one of my goals. That's one of my life goals that I have not accomplished yet, is being able to publish my story and get to people to read it because I know there got to be other people like me. I know I'm not the only one. I know that's one of the great things about therapy, which from a very young age, I went out for therapy. Because again, there was something in me that knew right away that what I was going through was not normal, that my mom's sadness was not normal, that my dad drinking was not normal. So at a young age, I started grasping this and trying to get out of that situation, because also at a young age, I grasped that there was no God and no God was going to come to help me. My mom was a fervent Catholic and my dad was an atheist. So I grew up with both concepts. And I myself came to the conclusion at age 10 when I noticed that I pray and I pray and I pray and nothing actually changed, so much that I begged God with the innocence of a child to come and take me out of the situation, that I realized at 10 years old, no, 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 you got to take the matters in your own hand. You got to get out of the situation. So I managed to get out of the situation. I manipulated circumstances at that moment and asked for help, asked my sister. That's a different story. And I was able to get out of New York, get away from my parents, and move to Dominican Republic, where then I started having a normal childhood and a normal adolescence, which I enjoyed tremendously. It was the best thing. But the damage was already done. So at age 10, or when I moved to Dominican Republic, I read a book that my sister told me that I was too young to read it, but still it caught my attention. It was called Your Erroneous Zones by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I also learned how to start living and stop how to stop worrying and start living by Dale Carnegie. And I also read Akmagdino as I was growing up. Akmagdino, I read it when I was 18 years old. So I started reading a lot of self-help books and even Dianetics. I even read Dianetics. That was too complicated for me. But, Dr. Wayne Dyer and Dale Carnegie, their language it was simpler. So it was easier for me to grasp what they were trying to teach. And I grasped it. Like I lived my life a lot like Dr. Wayne Dyer. I also joined the military. Like him, I avoided, because in his book Erroneous Zones, he talks about how he avoided stressful moments. If he looked at the part that he had control of, like he realized, what did he enjoy the most? Did he enjoy money? Was money his priority? And it wasn't, even though he became wealthy later on. But it wasn't. He wanted to have free time. He realized that when he was in the military. He got out of right away from the military, and then he became a teacher. He realized as a teacher that he didn't have as much free time as he wanted, so he became a counselor. He realized that as a counselor, he had more free time, but not as much as he wanted. So he became a university professor, and then he started writing a book, became a writer, and totally independent, like he wanted to be. He didn't like to report, to be working for someone else. And I kind of like have had that same lifestyle, being that I also enjoy my freedom, and every job that I have gone have been jobs that assure me that I could just work and then enjoy my free time. Not that I will have to spend my whole life at work or take that work with me. Even though sometimes I have had to, because you cannot avoid it. But there have been few. I have managed to keep my work at work and enjoy my life and travel as much as I wanted, and also enjoy relationships, although and also enjoy long-term relationship, because again, people who come from abuse, usually they don't have that. But what I could not avoid, even though I read Dr. Wayne Dyer and I read Dale Carnegie and I practiced the mantra of Og Mandino, the greatest salesman, I couldn't avoid feeling sad. I couldn't avoid that sadness that I saw my mom feel. Force myself. Most of my life, I had to have forced myself to look at the beautiful side of life, to look at the good side of life. Yet, I didn't understand what depression really was. I would say, "Oh, I had depression," because I was sad. I wouldn't get. But deep in the back of my mind, I did not grasp what depression was. And let's share right here. this professor, Robert Sapolsky, I apologize. And I love when I saw this video. And actually, I made a video out of this thing. I talked about it in another video, in my other channel, in my Erica Shady channel, where I talk about this guy and how he described the depression. And I believe this is the best description. This is the best definition of what depression actually is.
So there are all sorts of these great made-for-TV movie diseases out there. But when you want to come to, say, basic meat and potatoes of human medical misery, there is nothing out there like depression. Depression is absolutely crippling. Depression is incredibly pervasive and thus important to talk about. I'll make the argument here today, a number of things, but one critical thing being that basically depression is like the worst disease you can get. And I'll make the argument for that in a bit. It is devastating. It is wildly common. Current estimates are 15% of us in this room will have a major depression at some point or other in our lives. So that is not good. What is also clear is it is worldwide. Currently, World Health Organization says depression is the #4 cause of disability on this planet. And by the year 2025, it's going to be #2.
And this is before COVID, by the way, because COVID accelerated and increased the depression. Even among people who never suffered, they said that they felt depressed. So it it pushed it forward. If he said 2025, I think it's going to be 2023. Or maybe right now it should be the second.
After obesity, diabetes-related disorders. So it is bad news.
See, obesity, diabetes, and related disorder, related. Obesity is related to depression. People eat because it's like a drug. It makes you feel good. And I know about that. I know how that feels. Actually, when I was a kid, I was extremely overweight because I was constantly eating. I was constantly eating. And the reason why, because I couldn't drink alcohol, even though I had tried it when I was 5 years old as well. My dad gave it to me. And I also looked for it because I knew it made me feel good. And the same thing with eating. It made me feel good. It took away that anxiety. It took away the nervousness of people fighting around me and not knowing when the next slap or the punch was going to come from, because my ears and my eyes were always paying attention, always listening to that. Even when I was a baby, that's what happened to, because again, I said my abuse began before I was born. So as a baby, my mom tells me, or she told me, she doesn't tell me, she passed away. She told me that I used to, stand up on my crib every time my father came in and he started yelling. So as a baby, that was already affecting me. That's the excrement that was going into my brain.
And it is becoming more common. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today are seemingly two very, very different topics and tie them together at the end. And what the main point is if you live inside only one of those topics, you're not going to understand this disease at all. First topic being, what does biology have to do with depression? Second topic being, what does psychology have to do with it? Okay, so start.
So you guys, I'll leave the link of this class, of this speech, this lecture, and you guys can watch the full thing. But I do like it, the part where he described what depression is, how pervasive it is. And also I like in the video he described how how you feel sad sometimes, and then he's like, well, think about that day that you felt sad because something happened. Now think that multiply that for every day. Every day you feel like that. And he described how how you see everything gray when you're feeling sad and nothing motivates you. Well, that's depression right there. But it's constant. And for some people, it could stop. Like for me, it would stop at time when things were going good. I will move on and I wouldn't think about the sadness or depression. And then either something happened or sometimes nothing happened, and I would still fall under depression. That's when I realized, okay, I do suffer from this. This is something that, because you can understand that when something bad happens, someone's died, someone go to jail, hospital, anything like that, of course you're going to feel sad. And if you're somebody who suffers from depression, you're going to go down the rabbit hole of depression unless you prepare yourself for those moments in life. And that's when it comes handy Dale Carnegie, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and Ogmandino. That's when they came in handy. And who corroborates them were Dr. Joe Dispenza. I got his book here, and I'm not promoting it, okay? This is a small channel. So I'm going to read it. I've been reading it, but I haven't finished it yet. I'm reading it. It's a very good book. My therapist recommended it, and it's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I know he's a chiropractor, but he's also a neuroscientist. He has studied and he knows, okay, the way that he explains it is that our thoughts are like energy. You know how energy affects matter. You can't separate energy from matter or matter from energy. And according to the book, that's what we've been doing throughout science and the history of science. They have been separating matter as something independent from energy, and it's not. It's not independent. Energy affects matter. And if our thoughts are energy, they affect our body. It affects our brain. Our brain, it affects the way we think. It affects the way we act. It affects the way that we feel. And he believes, that, and he has said that he has put it into practice. Again, I'm going to read deeper into it and I'll talk again. Once I finish the book, I will talk about this book. But he goes deep into it on the how to break that habit. Now, I truly believe, and I'm going to say this, there's clinical depression, there's depression, and then there's sadness. Sadness comes because something happened in life that is bad and the persons feel bad about it. That's very normal. But there's also that clinical depression where it's constantly, where nothing has to happen for the person to feel like that. You need a psychiatrist, you need a psychologist, you might need medication, and you have to take it. You have to make that effort. At the end, it still comes from the individual. It still comes from the willingness of the person, because the doctor, the psychiatrist, the psychologist cannot force that pill. Now, some people don't need the pill. That's for the doctors to decide. That's for them and their psychiatrists, their psychologists to decide. And there are. I have talked to a lot of people who tell me, no, I'm not on any type of medication. I have also heard them on YouTube. I've seen videos of them and people that I know personally that they do it because of a disciplined life that they have. They follow certain patterns. They have certain habits. And Dr. Dispenza talks about that in this video. This will come from the Motivational 2 study. Go and check out their channel. Hopefully they won't block this. Hopefully I will be able to share it with you. I'm not going to share that much anyway, because there's a part here where, again, it's up to the individual. Even if the person needs a pill, it's up to the individual to go and take care of their mental health. And he talks about here of how mental health affects your your body, your brain, how stress affects your body and your brain. And something that I agree, and throughout my life experience, I have come to realize way before I heard him saying this. When I heard it, I was like, thank you. You corroborated what I thought. Why do I have to wait for something bad to me to happen before I look for help, before I look for the cure, before I try to prepare myself? Why do I have to, before I try to change my life? Why does this have something tragic must happen for us to change to change our life or to do something
Subconscious
about it?
program. Most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. They wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. And I think right now, the cool thing is that
And you can change in a state of joy and inspiration, meaning you take the rails, you take it by I don't want to say the word, but you take a hold of it. You take a hold of your life and decide to do it now at this moment. Change your life. Change the way that you're thinking. Change the circumstances that you're in. Okay? But you have to decide to do that. That's my message. That's all I wanted to share with you guys. You guys can go, and I'll leave the link to these videos and you guys can go and check them out. But I hope that if you bump into my video, coincidence, you like the title, you're feeling down, that you understand that no matter what, unfortunately or fortunately, it's up to you. You have to be the one in charge and say, I'm going to take care of this myself. Have a great weekend, guys. Have a great week, actually, because you're not going to see this during the weekend. Don't forget to subscribe.
Day that I wake up in a nightmare. Every day that I wake up